This really was the million-dollar question for me as I embarked on this project in the meaning of Sunday, was to explore why anywhere between 40 and 50% of Canadians, those who identify as Christian, attend religious services mainly for religious holidays and rites of passage. They show up every Christmas, they show up every Easter, they baptize their children, they want to get married in a church, but they don't attend any other time of the year. This is well known in popular discourse. I was at a conference a couple of years ago. I had met an individual who heard about my research, and he brought me this Easter card. And so on the front of the card it says, today's Easter sermon is, and you open it up and it says, where have you all been since Christmas? Happy Easter. And so it's this shared narrative that religious leaders know, that I think people in society know. And so I wanted to talk to these individuals. Why do they show up once or twice a year, religiously, literally, and have no intent of leaving? And three things emerged very clearly. The first was tradition. This is not surprising. It's actually surprising that few sociologists worldwide have asked these fairly basic questions, but tradition is one of them. So an individual says, every Christmas Eve we go to a Christmas Eve service and then we go for Chinese food. And the Chinese food is as important as the church service. In other words, it's just one of these things that we've always done. We're not going to stop doing it, and we're going to continue to bring our families. So tradition has this powerful anchor that guides our behavior. A second reason has to do with family. Sometimes it's my mother or my grandmother would like us all together in Christmas Eve service, and this is a nice family moment. And so rather than disappointing grandma or my mother, then I'm just going to attend, even though I may not even believe in what it is they're talking about. Others will talk about this as a time to be with family, especially when we are geographically spread across not only just a country, but across the world, that these can be times to come together as a cultural event. Much like sitting around the dinner table, attending a religious service brings back the family memories, things that we may not have as much over the course of a year, that it draws us together for those things. Or sometimes, in the case of a wedding, parents might be paying for the wedding. The pictures would look nicer in this beautiful church building rather than some other context. And so you observe your wedding within a religious context. So family has a powerful role in shaping how and why we do the things that we do across society. And this instance has to do with religion. The third reason that came up has to do with sacred space. This was not altogether surprising, but a little bit surprising to me. They talked about feeling closer to God in a church. That when they enter the doorways, there is this closer connection. And they'll even qualify. They'll say, I can be close to God in the mountains or out in nature and all these kinds of things. And this is what they prefer, perhaps, over the course of the year. But that one or two occasions over the year, when they can enter a church building, they say, I just feel closer to God. Somehow my prayers are closer. It helps me to reorient my life, to think about what's going on in my life, and so forth. And so as I analyze these three things, one of the conclusions I arrive at is, it seems that people who are attending once or twice a year are not necessarily attending for what I would call religious reasons, right? Tradition or family or just social and cultural pressures. The sacred space, one might say, well, these are deeply religious and spiritual things that are bringing them back, which might be the case. And yet, I ask the question, and I ask some of these individuals, okay, then why don't you attend more? If this is so profound and significant for you, why not attend on other occasions? I think I'll address this in one of the other sessions, but there seems to be a deep satisfaction with, I just need to show up once a year, and that's sufficient for me. In other words, I'm not as convinced that we should be as hopeful that, if people are showing up once a year, they actually want to attend more regularly, or they're finding something so deeply, profoundly religious and spiritual that they require more and more of this. I think in their minds, the sacred connection, it's significant for them in that moment, and maybe it's enough to sustain them until the next moment, half a year away or a year away. And so I think it provides us some empirical basis to unpack what is a fairly common ritual for people on an annual basis. And it just might be for more of the social reasons than it is for explicitly religious reasons.